Full disclosure, I'm a card-carrying member of the choir Bill Maher preaches to in the Larry Charles-directed 2008 film Religulous. In fact, like Maher, I have a hard time conceiving of any sentient being not being a member of this particular choir. You'd have to be some kind of knucklehead to think that a snake talked to set the world in motion, a woman gave birth without getting laid, magic underwear can save you from fire, and that you'll burn in hell if you take an elevator on a Saturday. And that's exactly what Maher and Charles ostensibly set out to illustrate in their documentary, that religion, all of them, are comprised of billions upon billions of knuckleheads. Not only that, but these empires of knuckleheads are dangerous, that they're perhaps humanity's most eminent threat, because by virtue of their sheer numbers, they empower the leaders of their respective cults, religions, and that these leaders are in turn so powerful that they could very well, with their own actions, not God's, bring about the apocalypse they preach about so vehemently to their flocks. Maher's road trip through the most absurd bowels of organized religion reveals a sort of doomsday chicken or the egg catch-22. Mere men gain power by scaring the bejesus out of gaggles of knuckleheads with doomsday prophecies, and then the knuckleheads empower them to actualize those very prophecies. This sort of human folly is the worst kind of terrifying, because it's absurd without a sense of humor, ridiculous without humility. It's Religulous. But as an angle for a cutting room review, it's simply too easy to just pass Maher's word along while citing examples from this road trip. Making knuckleheads look foolish is shooting fish in a barrel. Here's what happened. When I sat down to watch this film this time around, my screening was interrupted, and during the interval between watching the first half of the film and the second, I decided I'd take up the contrarian position. Though it would be impossible to disagree with Maher in any substantial or convincing way, I could call him out on his tact and his motives. I could even perhaps accuse him of the very thing that he's accusing the leaders of the knuckleheads of: prideful arrogance. Pride is, after all, one of the major no-nos in any inviolable system of beliefs, and it's also a no-no in comedy, not to mention the simple endeavor of being human. Maher is smart as a whip, but he's also smug. There's a cruelty in his comedy born of a pride and arrogance. Okay, there's a bit of cruelty in every comedy, but great comedy also holds within it empathy and humility. But these qualities that endow comics like Pryor and Woody Allen with genius, Maher substitutes for viciousness and conceit. The situation Maher places himself in are undeniably and appallingly funny. The juxtaposition of his rationality with the very ideal of irrational, the representatives of organized religion, is a simple and brilliant stroke. Maher visits a Holy Land amusement theme park and talks to a Jesus just before he's crucified to show tunes. He gets a senator to note that there's no IQ test for entering the Senate as a sort of, I guess, justification for his blind faith. He speaks with the Puerto Rican second coming of Christ who doesn't believe in sin. He awkwardly hugs a guy who was healed of his gayness by the church. And he talks to an ex-soul singer who insists that Jesus wants him to drive a Cadillac and wear alligator shoes. Jesus, it's also fucking insane. But there's a sort of perverse pleasure belying all of Maher's conversations with these knuckleheads that unsettles me as much as hearing a priest speak out against prophylactics. Though I've always revered Maher for his wit and brusque method of defacing hypocrisy and exposing avarice and stupidity, his smugness and this perverse pleasure he takes in it has always been a bit off-putting. And this underlying perversion I sense in Maher is what I plan to use as the underpinning of this review. I plan to make a point that Maher's pride-fueled perversion and giddiness of motive for making everyone else look foolish blinded him to the fact that, despite how he'd stand in judgment of them, many people have been able to endure the horrors and drudgery of life because of their faith. Worse, his pride blinded him to seeing and commenting on the most dangerous of all religions, capitalist consumerism. That religion that he and I and everyone here subscribes to whether we like it or not. Consumerism, in fact, subsumes all of the ridiculous and dying world religions, because yes, they are indeed dying, and pits them up against one another like a masterful chess player, so it can quietly go about its tyranny of destruction above reproach and without notice. I thought maybe I could make the point in this tiny review of mine that Maher was so blinded by his own sin of pride that he didn't see this most insidious and terrifying religion of all right there sitting in front of him. To steal an anecdote used once by David Foster Wallace, a fish doesn't know what water is. But then I watched the second half of the film. More importantly, I watched the last 5 minutes of it, where Maher makes his closing statements. His pithy summation of his travels through the monkey barrel of world religion is as elegant as it is forceful. Faith is the virtue of not thinking, he says. Those who preach faith are intellectual slaveholders, keeping people in bondage to fantasy and nonsense. Religious enables people who don't have the answers to think that they do. He says this before atoning for his own pride-born transgressions, or at least excusing them, saying that the best thing we can do is admit that we don't know, because I don't know. He tells us that doubt is humbling and that doubt is the only appropriate position to take when faced with the big human question. These are brave and surprising words coming from Maher. He uses science and rationality throughout the film to make the knuckleheads look just like what they are. But here he admits that even rationality and science don't have all the answers. The implication, of course, is that thought, knowledge, and wisdom change and progress with time, and today's science may someday look like magic underwear. This means to me that Maher's motives transcend perverse, prideful pleasure and extend into civic duty. That this film is a warning to us all. Ultimately, Maher urges all of us non-knuckleheads to action, to break our collective silence and speak out about the plague of world religion, because it is, without question, a threat to peace on earth. Kudos to you, Mr. Maher. I'm proud to be in the choir to whom you preach. But therein lies the inherent problem with documentaries like these, films that employ quote-unquote objective facts in order to make a filmmaker's very subjective point. They are always preaching to the choir. So I think that all of us, I would imagine, are in this choir here. I don't know, do you think that anybody who's a knucklehead would change their mind about this? Would they even... Is it even reaching anybody? I guess it's maybe the place to start.
Well,
I don't know.
That's interesting. I've tried to put this movie on once or twice with you know, with someone of extreme faith, and they get irritated like within 5 minutes.
I'm sure, and then they return, they leave, right?
Yeah. So, and it's just like like doing the same thing would say anything like another comedian like George Carlin when he talks about religion. It's like, well, listen to this guy, listen to what he said. This might make sense to you, and they get immediately offended. But it amazes me, like Maher says, like in this documentary, it's like, these are people who otherwise, like, they deal with everything, in their life almost logically, except this. Like they put their blinders on, when it comes to this nonsense.
It's powerful stuff, man. Well, you're indoctrinated into it, so that's all you know. You know what I mean? It's hard. Yeah, it's hard to see outside of that.
Well, yeah, and it really, it sums up like humanity real simple, like, because it's like to believe in this stuff and to think that you would go on to like something even more extraordinary with this than this life that we're honestly I mean we should be ecstatic about, that we get to live for whatever reason it may be, most likely no reason, but it's extremely like narcissistic of people like to believe in this shit.
Sure. Yeah. Well, it puts us at the center of the world.
Do you understand what I'm saying? Like,
yeah.
Like
well, it means
like
that
really
everything
arrogant.
Sure.
Right.
It means that we're the only. It means that our God tells us that we're the only ones that matter, and everything revolves around us. We're like
right.
it's
How
ridiculous.
dare we?
I know.
How dare
it's
we?
It's true, man.
And listen, it takes a lot of balls to make this documentary, Joe.
Yeah.
It really does. It really does.
What was the reaction to it? Do you know what the reaction was to it? Did it cause like a stir, as much of a stir that you think?
I think it just came and went, and I think you put it perfectly when you say that he's just preaching to the choir. I think his fans watch it. They probably watched it again, and that's it. I don't think that it caused much of a stir. I could be wrong. Billy or Dave, did you? Did you know differently, or?
The only response I really know of. It's funny because in America there's an entire class like if you know the born again Christian community and all that stuff, there were probably mass protests against this movie, and thousands and thousands of people ranting and raving about it and publications made, but we're in different camps.
Yeah.
Like we don't hear each other. There's occasional, like, it's two ships that trade broadsides occasionally, but otherwise have nothing to do with each other. And there's Fox News and there's MSNBC, and the people who watch either of those are never going to watch the other channel.
Right. It's so funny, man. I was just to your point there, Billy. I was just watching an interview with Haneke, and he was asked if he wants to talk to people who don't understand his films or something like that, or get mad about the way he makes films or something. He was like, and this quote was, there can be no productive conversation between believers and non-believers, and that's it, you know.
That's
Well, and
probably
that's
why
you
he
guys.
turned. That's why he turned down the fucking Fangoria interview, man. It all makes sense now.
Everything goes
seriously,
back to Fangoria.
No, part of the no. It's just because part of the angle I was pitching was I want you to talk about this movie with an audience that is looking for the kill shot, and you're denying it to them, right? Like, talk to these people. I thought that'd be really cool. And yeah, sorry.
Part of the I mean, part of the problem of the believer world. I mean, there's varying shades of all this stuff. You know, I mean, you talk to a lot of scientists and they know everything there is to know about science, and yet, you know, over drinks they'll say, yeah, I believe in God, and I don't know why, and I don't really care about it. It doesn't color my decisions about life or science or politics or anything, but there's just something out there that I feel, you know. And so there's a very innocent form of faith, and then there's the other form, which, you know, I ran screaming from because of its insanity, is the echo chamber of self-fulfilling logic, where, you know, like if you read Thomas Aquinas, it's the most infuriating type of phony philosophy ever, because he proceeds from the conclusion that God exists and then runs every argument in human history through the mill to prove how, or to show how it proves that God exists. And if you've already drawn your own conclusion, then there's no arguing with you. And that's like that side of America, that side of the world in general. You know, if someone from inside of that wants to voyage outside of it, it's by their own volition. It's on their own independent sense of curiosity. And
that's a sin, and that's the lock that it has, because in all
and that's the problem.
All religions, if you doubt, then you're sinful. You know what I mean? So it's like a catch-22 there. And
I always have this hypothetical argument with, and I've never actually had this argument with for instance, a Christian, but if you truly have enough faith in God, if you truly believe in the concept of God, then nothing, and you believe in the idea that this thing is unknowable by nature, then nothing that you can know is a part of that God, because he's inherently unknowable. And that unknowableness includes the Bible and your religion and what people tell you about belief and all of that. But that concept is unfathomable because they just, you know, there's just a vague series of biblical notions that they follow, and they're never, you know, it's a self-fulfilling prophecy every time.
Well, you know, here's the big problem as I see it. And the big problem really is that it is two solitudes, right? It's two groups of people who collect are just never going to see things the same way, and that's difficult because there's subgroups, right? There's like the people who are like watching Fox News and MSNBC, and so they're engaged in this at one level, right? And then there's maybe the people who would watch like a Religulous type movie and be into that. And they're sort of at like, you know, they're a lot more engaged in this sort of thing. They've put a lot more thought into it. And then you've got the people who are like watching Richard Dawkins like debate, you know, priests and shit like that. And these people are fully engaged and like can sit there and just argue with you about whatever, you know. And the problem is that those arguments are really the arguments that we need to hear, and that most people are totally unequipped to understand. Like, there's no easy point of entry for your casual guy on the street who wants to make up his mind about God, how you get him into some of those really big discussions. It's a lot to ask of people who haven't really been given the tools.
My biggest beef with anything, literally anything, and again, I'm a science buff and I love all that shit, but scientists get as dogmatic. Dogmatism is a human instinct, and it's comforting. And any discipline, whether it's religious or scientific or political or whatever, you know, if someone has decided that there's a switch that can be thrown inside the human mind that says, I don't want to think about this. I don't want to think about anything outside of that. And I'm going to use this as my comfort zone. So, it can be a political party, and anyone who challenges that political party is automatically evil, and you're now safe. It's us versus them. And that happens with me all the time. I do it, in small ways. People do it in big ways, but I mean, dogmatism is universal. I feel like with the Bill Maher thing, he's not aiming at he's putting the movie like Religulous out there, and if someone from inside the bubble wants to reach out and look at it and it changes their life, great. But I also think that he's doing kind of the thing where he's putting himself so far left and becoming militantly progressive,
Really?
that he makes other people look moderate by comparison. I think he does that very deliberately sometimes.
You think he's just being too aggressive here?
No, I mean, obviously, I'm in the choir that he's preaching
course,
to.
yeah.
His method in the movie, I mean, Joe, I loved your back and forth argument, and I love that you were going to take the contrarian position that he was being an asshole in this movie. I thought that was brilliant.
He is an asshole.
He's a total asshole in this fucking movie.
I love him regardless. Yeah, and he was real sneaky too. I think he set up most of these interviews with the people under the belief that the name of the film was A Spiritual Journey, and they had no idea that they were going to be interviewed by Bill Maher, and he kind of just came in,
A lot of those interviews are pretty stage managed on his part, and they're deliberately made to make the people look like assholes.
Particularly at the what is that place? The freaking
the Holy Land
Creation?
amusement.
Yeah,
the Holy Land experience is phenomenal. I
gotta get there.
I drive.
You would go, Joe?
Absolutely, in a heartbeat. In a heartbeat.
Joe, next time you take the family down to Disney.
Well, I would not take my family.
No. Next time you take your family down to Disney World, let me know, and I'll fly down there, and we'll go to the Holy Land together. But we'll do it in costume. We'll dress in robes.
But honestly, that was completely insane.
It's insane. It's absolutely.
But there's the museum in the Midwest. I don't remember if this is in Religulous or not, but it's the Creationist Museum where they have dioramas of dinosaurs walking with human beings.
They showed a dinosaur wearing a saddle.
Yeah, exactly. But I mean, here's the Tom. You and I both watch Real Time with Bill Maher, right?
Week, yeah.
So we're even more in the choir than probably Dave. You don't watch it, do you?
Not religiously.
But yeah, I mean, if you watch the show, you know that Maher's best ability is to be completely as objective as anyone can who has personal convictions. Like, I mean, he loves the new pope. Right?
Yeah.
He's not so arrogant that he says, well, obviously we have to live in a world where there are popes. It's bullshit, but, and I disagree with it. But if there has to be one, he might as well be a guy who goes around washing the feet of the poor and actually behaving with humility and doing the thing that the church is supposed to, that professes to do. So
yeah, like he says, he says it so well. He's like, thank you for being Christ-like and not Christian.
Well, that's it, man. I mean,
that's it.
The problem isn't with the words of Christ or the teachings of Christ, because the guy was
no, that's not the problem.
No, the problem are all the knuckleheads who take it up and have their own agenda. That's right. That's what the issue is,
And that doesn't necessarily have to be the people in charge. I mean, that could just be a commoner,
It is. It's mostly just. I mean, let's face it. What we're talking about here is something that I believe it's fundamentally a character flaw. It's a failure of character. It's a failure of your mind to be able to understand that there are things we don't know yet, and just because we don't know. Does not mean we get to fill the space with whatever we want. We don't get to just go and supplant magic for every little spot where maybe we don't fully understand. Because one day we might, and all of a sudden, all the stuff we once thought was magic actually has a pretty good rational explanation. And
Yeah.
so the world that God resides in these people's minds is shrinking and shrinking
Yeah.
rapidly.
That's
Well,
why
that's
it's
the
dying. You know, that's why I
with-
said that it's the world of religion.
You think it's dying?
World of
You know,
religions
and this is why.
but not
I don't
worshiping.
know about that.
But not worshiping. Not worshiping.
But listen now, because this is what concerns me about Bill Maher's movie is Bill Maher's movie aims very low, right? You know, he takes basically a bunch of guys who are whack jobs and who other religious people would rightly say, well, yeah, but those guys are whack jobs. I'm not one of those guys.
They
Right?
ding 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 hit the nail on the head.
You know,
man.
I'm not crazy like
He's
that.
preaching to the choir, and the choir already knows those people are knuckleheads. We don't need to have
Right.
that shown to us.
Like,
you know,
I
he could
want-
he could aim to more. Yeah,
Absolutely.
Yeah. Sorry,
like,
go on.
like I want like Religulous Part 2, where they go and actually like, okay, now I'm going to take on your fucking neighborhood preacher, you know, and not the crazy guy, but the guy who actually like would preach in your church. You know what I mean? You normal regular people who say that's not us. Let's take those guys on. You know, and just figure out what gets to them, because those are the people you've got to win over, right? Like those are the minds that you're after, and if you can't get them, and they're a hard bunch to get, man, because they're not fooled, they're not convinced by Bill Maher's movie, but they're not ready to sit down and watch Dawkins debate the Archbishop of Canterbury for 5 hours.
Who is this now?
Richard Dawkins.
Okay.
Richard Dawkins. He's a biologist, and now way more famous for being a very vocal atheist. You know, has written books all about basically, most of his books have been about like evolution and shit like that, and have more recently just been about religion in general and how it's all complete nonsense. But I mean, you know, he's huge. He's huge right now.
I'll look into it.
And like literally, there's great YouTube videos of him reading the letters that he gets from religious people, where they explain to him all the ways they want to kill him, and like literally like you know, we're coming for you with shotguns. Like, you're gonna fucking die. You're gonna.
Hey, that actually ties into the response to Religulous. Bill Maher did, and he did get death threats and
for
stuff
sure.
Like that. And he had to get like you know, extra security and stuff like that. From the little bit that I've read, it was, you know, I mean, the nut jobs are all over the place, and you challenge them even a little and they fly off the handle. Because I mean, it basically boils down to a personal dissatisfaction, and you latch on to some sort of mythology as an outlet. So, you know, you want to take your insanity out on the world somehow, and, you know, then someone gives you a target and voila, you know.
Yeah, it's great that you mentioned that, Billy, because they say that the Nazis used to say that the greatest source of new brown shirts was the communists.
There you go.
And it was they very much understood that it didn't matter what the ideology was. You just had to plant something in there and fucking throw a uniform on.
Yeah.
And
here's like I'm very strongly, you know, I don't know, man. I chase my tail on this shit all the time, but you know, it doesn't take a religion to have a bunch of lunatics, you know.
No, it helps. I mean,
some of the biggest mass. It doesn't even though. It doesn't. All it takes is an ideology that can manipulate the masses. And I mean, look, Soviet Russia killed more people in the 20th century than all the other ones combined.
But religious people will use that as an argument for why non-religion or atheism is evil. And that's how they'll perceive that. They'll be like, well, look what happened. They created a godless society and
I do
butchered
think
each
here's
other.
the thing though.
It's a
I think
horror
it's
show.
more of a boogeyman any more than a genuine threat. I mean, even with all the whole, you know, Islamic terrorism and all that stuff, fundamentalism, how many people have actually been killed because of Islamic terrorists compared to Soviet Russia or China, you know, or the Khmer Rouge, you know, ethnic purging, Africa. I mean, those are ethnic divides, and people are murdering the bejesus out of each other, and it has nothing to do with religion, you know. I think
we're hitting on what makes this really hard to communicate to people who are used to having things nice and easy. Things are nice and easy. They're black and white. This guy's bad. This guy's good. This is how it all works. Nice and easy. And when you start getting into all this really nuanced shit about, well, it's actually really about ideology, which is fucking true. Like what we're saying is not untrue, but it's hard to talk about. It's hard to get people engaged into because they're so used to just getting real easy shit fed to them, real easy shit just handed to them, and here it is.
Yeah. Well, I actually think that the need to worship is really so seriously and deeply embedded in us, like hardwired, hardcore. Like
Mhm.
I think that that's where this is, where the root of this is, and you called it a character flaw. I actually think it's probably like an evolutionary condition that needs to be strained out eventually.
But it's simple. It's as simple as like it is true that we need to worship because the moment you're born, you're taken care of by someone who you immediately are forced to worship.
Well, there's
Like
always
so, it's right there. It's right
but
there
it's
from.
it's right there all around us, and there's a good reason why there's a need to worship, because there's something almost bigger than us, and I don't care, science, whatever, science could be asking questions and proving things until the year 50,000. It's never gonna grasp its arms around everything. It can't. Because every time it uncovers something, it's going to cover something more. And then this is inherently understood on like a deep evolutionary level, like an instinctive level. And the fact is, in order to cope with the fact that there's something greater than us, like inconceivably greater than us, we start throwing names on it. And I don't care if it's Zeus or the Pharaoh or the fucking the
L.
jet
Ron
or
Hubbard.
the jaguar that's sitting in your that you need to get to that gives you meaning in life. Like because the only, and here's where the character flaw is that we think that we're the center of the fucking world, and as soon as we realize that we're nothing, then all of a sudden we don't need to kill anybody to make ourselves feel better and to prove our theories of what it is that's bigger than us. So like I think what happens is the question that all religions, ironically enough, hit on. It's humility. Find humility and sacrifice, and then
Well, and I
all of a sudden you're gonna find that
Oh,
you're
religion is good at sacrifice. They're real good at that.
Yeah, they enjoy it, Joe.
well, self-sacrifice,
There
which
you
I
go.
should say. And that's where it is, like abstaining, some it's just humility, man. And that's all it takes, is to realize that you're not the center of the fucking world, and then all of a sudden you don't feel so bad
Nobody
about that
wants to hear
person.
that, man. That's a bummer. I'm the center of the world, motherfucker.
Right, and that's the hardest thing.
That's you're up
that's what
against,
you're up
man.
against. You're up
You're,
against your intellect trying to tell you that you're not the center of the world, versus whatever, how many ever 10,000 years of evolution telling you that you need to believe in something bigger and join the tribe, or else you're not going to survive.
The tribe.
Because that's what it is. I mean, it's a
Yeah,
gang.
no,
It's
it is.
gangs
It's a
and
gang.
tribes. I
Yeah.
mean, we're not hitting each other with stones. We're driving planes into each other's buildings and raping and saying that we need to go and control. Oh, this one country threw chemicals on their people. What about all the other fucking countries that are keeping their people in utter poverty and they're dying in the streets every day? But our friggin' capitalist consumer religion of consumers capitalism tells us that the best thing to worship is the thing that keeps our economy flowing, so we could get the shit that makes us feel better, because that's what our tribe is about. So we're gonna go and control Syria next.
Joe, you know what you're doing here?
I know I'm on a fucking soapbox. You
You're
gotta
you're
stop me,
preaching. You're
Tom.
preaching
no,
to the
man.
choir.
You know what? I'm so looking forward to this next generation taking over the world
Yeah.
because this is the generation that has finally like gotten like nerdy geek culture accepted, and so they're just awash in hoggish consumerism. And really, geek culture is basically just built around just consumption, like just naked consumption of shit.
Yeah.
And so we've got this massive generation of like fucking people coming up watching that fucking, what is that fucking show with the nerds on TV? That fucking awful goddamn show.
Well, everyone just throwing themselves blindly into whatever it is that they're shoving out down the supermarket aisles and the friggin' technology gadget.
This is the future we get to live in. This is, I'm so fucking excited.
Dude,
I'm so excited. All these motherfuckers are going to be watching anime while fucking everybody's gassing
no, it's
each
worse
other
than that.
and shit's
It's worse than
going
that, Dave.
It's gonna be a nightmare.
It's worse than that, Dave. I was listening to the radio today, like literally right before I got on the air today, and they're talking about the newest iPhone, the iGadget, which is going to be like what do they call them? The quantifiers. There's like a sect of like consumer like geekoids called quantifiers, I think it is, and they want the wristband on their wrist to monitor like their blood, their pulse, and their blood, and to know when you're sleeping, and to know when you're like, and so all of a sudden it's not good enough that you put down what you ate for lunch on Facebook. You're gonna have something that's monitoring your blood to let everybody know when you're dreaming and if you're having a good dream or not, and if you're where like you're just gonna blindly put yourself into that because it's the next bullshit thing. And they're talking about making your world easier because it's gonna tell you how you feel.
And the NSA is going to collect all this shit. See,
you're gonna tell me we're not in a religion right now, and that's not the most dangerous fucking religion, because in order for us to keep our economy going, our tribe better go and kick the shit out of all the other fucking places that we need shit from, because otherwise we're not gonna have that iGadget, in time for Christmas.
See, this is really fucking insane. So this is the thing. Like I laugh at Alex Jones, and I'm like, Alex Jones is such a fat, stupid asshole, and it's funny. And then you realize that holy shit, no, like the NSA really is like listening to all this shit, and so like if I say anything really bad right now, they'll probably they'll put us on a list or something, right? And that's fucking true. Like that's not even some like crazy paranoid fantasy. This is established fact of living in 2013, and that's fucking mental. Yeah. Like if you just think about how fucking mental that fact is, and then the fact that what people are gonna fucking be putting their heart rate on fucking Twitter. What the fuck? I don't even. That
doesn't even make any sense.
If you think it through a little bit, it makes perfect sense. Like
it's this perfect self-absorption, right? It's all about me.
Yes, that's it. That's it.
Crazy. Oh, it's sickening. It's sickening, man.
And it's the same impulses of why people.
Yeah.
It's the same shit, man. It's gonna make you better. It's the answer. It's gonna you have a part of identity. You have an identity. That's what it's about too. Is that fucking identity thing? People can't. Jesus Christ, they need. Oh my God, I can't. I'm gonna have a heart attack, Tom.
Take it easy, John. I'm gonna wrap it up.
Scary shit. It's scary.
I'm ending this because it's just either somebody's gonna be victim of the NSA here. I'm starting to think that I have the NSA gave me gout now. Which is starting to really kill me horribly right now. So
you like the president?
Guys, anything else on Religulous? Billy, Joe, Dave, anything else you want to throw out there before we wrap it up? All right, I like the sound of that.
I said plenty.
But no, listen, guys, this is something that, it's without a doubt worth checking out. And if Bill Maher's not on your radar, if you're not a Bill Maher fan, it's directed by Larry Charles, who did Borat. I mean, if you're an open-minded person, I mean, it's certainly a documentary you should check out, right? I mean, or a closed-minded, but the closed-minded won't do it. But if you're not a Bill Maher fan, I mean, I think Larry Charles lends a lot of great comedy in here, man.
I want to add to that and just say that if this is your entry point into sort of arguments against religion and you're curious about what's going on, like, understand this is an entry point, and it gets more sophisticated from there on out. So just keep that in mind, and don't think that a lot of people get stuck in the idea that like, oh, this is the best you can knock down, and it's not. Like, we can do better. So just keep that in mind.
Nice, Dave. Billy, Joe?
Billy, can you close out, man? You're thinking something.
over there.
I'm so fucking depressed, man.
Is it a fucking
We
bummer?
listen.
Is it a bummer,
this-
dude?
It is
Is this-
depressing.
This is how we're starting our season. We start with two old people dying, progress to I hate that movie, and end with everyone's an idiot. It's all due.
The new season of The Cutting Room.